I think the majority of people on the internet giving their opinions are kind of fake on some level, but there are some real ones. Who are the real ones?
Who are the real ones? That's, I guess personally, I spend a lot more time in spheres that are off the beaten path.
Yeah.
And so I think that there are some, people out there that maybe don't have massive, fan bases or, big voices in influential halls of power, but are speaking some of the most important truths out there today.
Well, I think you're one of them. And that's one of the reasons, that's the main reason I wanted to meet you and have this conversation, because as much as I hate technology and electricity and all that stuff, and I'm pretty Kaczynski'd on all that modernity business, I do think the best thing about the modern world is the internet. And the fact that people who, don't have any connections to anything can succeed on the basis of the strength of their wisdom and of their opinions. And I just think you're a perfect example. So you work for the Blaze, and but you're very widely read on the internet. How did you get here? Like, how did you do that? Was this something that you planned?
Not at all. I mean, I've always been very interested in politics. I got a political science degree in college, and I worked on a few campaigns, but there just wasn't much going on there. And so I ended up falling into being a local reporter for a while. I covered news and crime, or politics and crime. And then I worked as a teacher, for a long time. But when COVID struck...
High school teacher.
Public school, yeah. And when COVID hit... I had all the opinions you'd expect from a talk radio conservative listening to Dennis Prager and Sean Hannity and these guys. And then when I watched, the churches were closed and the strip clubs were open, and you couldn't go see a dying loved one in the hospital, but Democrats could riot in the streets and burn down your neighborhood. And nobody did anything, right? Like, this is, I've been told my whole life by conservatives, this is what the Second Amendment's for, right? Like, the government has closed the churches, guys. We are across the Rubicon. And I thought I was going crazy, because all of the people who had been spouting all of this my whole life were like, well, no, you're probably fine. We got to figure out how to work. And I just realized, okay, the Constitution is not stopping any of this. So I need to understand why. And so I started reading a lot of political theory outside of the mainstream. I read this guy, Curtis Yarvin. He just started writing under his real name, used to be Mencius Mollbug. And he had a bunch of other, authors that I needed to understand. And the more I read that, the more I wanted to share what was going on. And so
this is just in your spare time.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how I started tweeting and, putting out material and writing.
So it's just pure citizen. Like, you don't really know anybody. You're just reading this stuff and coming to your own conclusions, and then you start tweeting them out. And the next thing you know, you're doing it full time and you have a big following.
Yeah, I think it's a situation where there are a lot of really important thinkers. And, to be clear, I'm just standing on the shoulder of giants, guys like Samuel Francis and Joe Sobran and Pat Buchanan and Paul Gottfried, who were sitting in the wilderness for decades and decades. And that's why I think the conservative movement was so intellectually impoverished for so long. We forced all of our brightest minds into the wilderness because they kept saying things that didn't jive with kind of a neocon agenda, and they had to be driven from polite society.
And nobody said anything. And at the center of so much of that was William F. Buckley Jr., who, I think had good qualities for sure. I'm not, it was awfully nice to me, I will say. So I don't hate the guy or anything, but in retrospect, he really served one meaningful role in his life, which was to keep a certain variety of nationalism out of the conservative canon.
Yeah, I think we can see this over and over again. You even think of a guy like Russell Kirk, right? Wrote The Conservative Mind, one of the intellectual giants defining the movement, and more or less got canceled because he made one too many jokes about the capital of the United States being in Tel Aviv. Like that's all it took for you to get shoved off. You can have this monumental career and this critical position, and you can, no longer be allowed in polite society, no longer get invited to the right dinners if you have, the wrong opinions.
It feels like things are changing fast. Do you feel that?
Absolutely.
Where are they going?
They're going to go to a lot of interesting places. As you pointed out, the news sphere, and more importantly, the narrative sphere, has disintermediated, right? We're no longer completely reliant on a couple news channels and a couple big newspapers. And, at first, the right really liked this because it meant that they could get around, the left-wing control of all of these critical centers. But now people on the right are getting panicked because their narratives are also breaking down. They can no longer, you can't use the National Review and a couple of think tanks in DC to kind of dictate how people understand the
I don't
world.
even criticize National Review. I feel, it's like so, I don't think people even know what it is, do they?
No one my age at this point, no.
No. So they're panicked, like Meghan McCain's all upset that
Right.
people are saying things are just she's never heard before. But I feel like people like that are irrelevant now. Or maybe I'm just hoping that's true.
No, I think that's increasingly the case. Again, I can't think of anyone who isn't paid in the Beltway who is under 50 who cares what any of those people think.
So what does it mean to be safe in your own home? For a long time, that meant good locks and maybe an alarm system. That was enough, but they're not enough. And you know that because the news is filled with stories of people who thought they were protected and fell victim anyway. Simply Safe can help prevent you from becoming the next victim. Instead of just responding after somebody comes into your home, an intruder enters, Simply Safe can stop them from ever getting in the first place. It's proactive. It doesn't just react. It stops the problem before it starts. Simply Safe's cameras and live monitoring agents detect suspicious activity, and if somebody is lurking around your house, agents engage in real time. They activate spotlights. They can call the cops to get the intruder away from your house and prevent him from coming in. Not all security systems do that. The difference is enormous. That's why our team, along with 4 million other people in this country, trust Simply Safe. Monitoring plans start for about $1 a day. They include a 60-day money-back guarantee. Visit simplysafe.com/Tucker to claim 50% off a new system with professional monitoring, and your first month is free. That's simplysafe.com/Tucker. There is no safe like Simply Safe.
Right. And so I think we're really going through a generational switch. I think the tail end of the boomer generation is still very much tied to the conservative institutions. They've had that, cultural foxhole mentality for a long time, and they see those people as their champions. But I think everyone behind them recognizes that, hey, I followed these, platitudes for decades and they never did anything for me. And you know what I want to conserve? The ability of my family to have children.
Amen. Amen. I completely agree. I've reduced my whole life down to that. That's it. That's my worldview. Can my kids have kids and live in this beautiful place called America? Will it still be beautiful? Will it be all low-income housing? No. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think more and more the message that we don't live in an economic zone, but an actual nation is really resonating with people.
Yes.
We successfully somehow turned the right wing into the party of just disposable culture, disposable identities, disposable people. Who cares if the trade policy revolutionizes your town and gets rid of all the jobs and everyone gets hooked on drugs? At least the free market won, right? No, I don't care. I care about my neighbor. I care about my family. I care about the community that we've built for generations. I shouldn't have to pick up my entire life and the many, many generations of social fabric that exists there to go move somewhere else every time you decide it's slightly cheaper to make something in China. That's not the way, that's not a conservative way to understand our society. And I think that's why you're seeing all of these institutions lose their power, because ultimately what people really care about preserving is the American people, the American way of life, the tradition and existence of the people around them. And I don't think you can sell them the idea that like infinite foreign labor is worth taking a bunch of cruises at the end of your life and then making sure your kids can't own a home. Like those things are no longer something that actually sells to, I think, the coming generations.
No, I think they're rejecting it with real hostility.
Yeah.
Do they believe in democracy? Do they believe the current system can ever improve the country?
I think at this point, democracy is just a shibboleth. I don't think it really means a whole lot to people.
No.
It's, what is our democracy? It's throwing the major candidate of the Republican Party in jail. That's democracy. That's how we protect our democracy, right? What does that phrase even mean at this point? I think people are ready for a government that cares about them, elites that care about them, elites who know that they're ruling and know that they have an obligation to a specific group and are no longer just, using these people as pieces of exchange.
So it sounds like what you think, not to put words in your mouth, but what you think is being rejected or going away is a fundamentally theoretical understanding of politics in the world that is just not satisfying. In the end, it doesn't serve anybody except for the people peddling the lie. What we're going to be staring down, or living through, is an understanding of the world that's like much more practical and real. Like, are you improving my life? If you're not, leave.
Yeah, again, this is where we understand that the foundation of politics is really patronage. What can you, the ruling class, those in charge, what kind of life can you provide for us? What can you protect? What are you doing? A very direct relationship, not abstractly. Are you signing a piece of paper, a treaty somewhere, in Western Europe that will theoretically secure my right to? No. What can the person next to me have children? Can the guy down the street take his kids to church, send them to school without worrying about whether they'll be shot? Is that an option? Because that matters to me way more than the idea that you're defending democracy in Ukraine.
Exactly.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.